This is the Less Insurance Dependence podcast show with my good friend Gary Takacs and myself, Narain Arul Raja.
We appreciate your listenership, your time, and most of all, we appreciate your intention to reduce insurance dependence in your practice. Our goal is to provide information that will help you successfully reduce insurance dependence and convert your practice into a thriving and profitable dental practice that provides you with personal, professional, and financial satisfaction. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Dentist Show. I'm Gary Takacs, your podcast co-host. We have an awesome podcast interview for you today. Those of you that are regular listeners know that I like to mix up the format in our podcasts to keep things interesting for you. And you guys know that one of the formats that I love to use is an interview. And today I've got an interview with my good friend, Josh Gosnell. Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Gary, thanks for having me.
I'm excited about this interview. So one of the things I like to do is I like to keep my ear to the ground about companies in dentistry that are doing some really cool things. And I have found just that in Josh and his company. You're going to learn more about what they do. But I love the operational side of dentistry, and they have developed some really cool functionality that seamlessly integrates in your practice with functions that were previously kind of held out on their own. And so they allow you to do some really cool things with your patients that I think will be a great enhancement to just the day-to-day practice of the business side of dentistry. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. The company's name is Adit, A-D-I-T. We'll talk more about that. But before I get into our podcast interview, I'd like to make a quick announcement. Coming up not too long after this is published, we have our 2025 RITA Virtual Summit, RITA Reducing Insurance Dependence Academy Annual Summit. It's happening Friday, October 24th. It is from noon to 5:30 Eastern Time, 5.5 hours. It's a virtual summit. This is our 5th annual virtual summit. Each year, we've doubled the attendance. We started this in 2021, and the idea was to share lots of information with you about how you can successfully resign from PPO plans. I'll do an opening keynote. We'll have a couple other keynote speakers. We'll also have multiple panels throughout the day. Everybody that will be appearing in that virtual summit will have something to do with you successfully resigning from PPO plans. And here's the great news. You get 5 hours of CE credit, and the tuition is free. We're gifting you your tuition as a courtesy to your listenership. You do have to register. And to register, just go to rid.academy. RID, Reducing Insurance Dependence, .academy, and you'll notice a quick pop-up for you to register. So come join us Friday, October 24th, 5 hours. It's actually 5.5 hours. We have to take a couple breaks during that. We'll take a couple short breaks, but you'll get 5 hours of CE credit. And more importantly than that, you'll be armed with everything you need to know about successfully resigning from PPO plans. As you know, that's a passion of mine. All right. Mark your calendars and come join us. But Josh, I'm excited to have you on this podcast. We've been working on this for the last little while. And every time we talk, I discover new things about Adit that I didn't know before. And you have really put together an amazing, I'm going to call it a product. It's a product and a service. Would that be a fair way to describe what you're providing?
100%. Yeah. A platform.
Platform. There we go. Platform's even better. Yeah. I know that you've been in dentistry, and I know that some of our listeners might recognize you, but many of our listeners might be learning about you for the first time. Would you mind starting by sharing a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Formal background was in finance and international business, what I studied. Coming out of school, I did what a lot of people who study business do, and I went into sales. Worked in chiropractic, so small medical practices for the first several years. So chiropractic, optometry, veterinarian as well. About 10 years ago, moved to Houston, Texas, met a very brilliant guy named Adit, who's the founder of our company. We got together and we started a business within dentistry, doing digital marketing. And so we were doing, website design, Google Ads, SEO, the whole nine in that respect for dental practices, helping them grow. We were doing that several years. That was the main service that we offered. We had a program that we called our patient booking guarantee, where we would actually guarantee a dental practice, we'd book them a certain amount of new patients, or we'd refund them, for their fees for that month. And something really interesting happened once we started seeing a lot of success there. We, maybe had 500 practices that we were working with and we were doing the marketing for. So we had a unique insight into some of the numbers, for dental practices. But there was a problem. There was a gap in information that we could see from a practice booking a new patient appointment and whether or not that patient showed up for the appointment and whether or not they accepted treatment and were reappointed, et cetera. And so about 7 years.
The game doesn't end when they make the appointment.
Exactly. And so as a marketing company, and you guys know, 7-10 years ago, most marketing companies were just bringing leads and it's still some do, but, we were based around, we wanted to make sure we actually booked you appointments, but we wanted to take it a step further and make sure that these people showed up. But we needed the integrations into the practice management softwares. So we had to go build these integrations into the Open Dentals, the Dentrix, the EagleSoft of the world so that we could actually see the full patient journey. Well, as we kind of connect the dots there and pull more analytics, it started to reveal more and more problems that dental practices were facing, and it started with, I'm getting a ton of unique visits to my website, but I just can't get these people to book appointments. Is there any way?
We got the visitors, they're visiting, but they're not taking action.
Exactly. And so it started with, can you put my schedule online? Is there a way that someone can actually see my schedule and book online? So we said, yeah, so we go build the software for online scheduling. So of course, as soon as people can start scheduling, what goes up? Your no-shows and your cancellations, right? So the next thing was, hey, is there any way we can confirm these appointments? Can we remind them of these appointments? Can we send them digital forms? And it just kept evolving over the years, and building different products and different technologies on top of what we were doing. So fast forward to 2020, when COVID happens, we're still widely known as a digital marketing firm that offers technology to assist with the digital marketing. Well, what was interesting, when COVID hits, the first thing that people get rid of is their marketing. So we get a ton of calls saying, hey, we got to close down for 3 months. We can't even take any new patients.
We don't need, yeah.
But what was really interesting was that they were also saying, but now that we guys use you for our phone systems and for our texting and for our online scheduling, et cetera, is there any way we can just use this? And at the time, we didn't even offer it as a service. It wasn't, we didn't set out to be a software company. So we said, what, give us a couple $100 a month and you can just keep using what you're using. Well, it was a complete 180. Over the next 12 months, it was a complete shift to where all the business was calling us saying, hey, my friend uses you guys for his, patient management software within the practice. Can I get on board? And so we reallocated a lot of our resources and you said, what, we want to be the best engagement and analytics platform out there. There's nothing that really exists right now that brings all of this into one place. I would say there were certain pieces of technology, but for a practice, they're having to pay 3, 4, 5 different companies, with different user interfaces to make those things happen. We said, we're the only one that's really doing it all in one place.
Yeah.
So we involved on that. It's been going strong for about 10 years now. We've got about 5,000 practices using the Adit software across the country. So really excited about what we've done so far and about what's on the horizon as well.
Well, we're going to take, with your permission, John, we're going to take kind of a deep dive into this. Is that all right?
Let's do it.
So what I see, and again, I'm on the outside looking in, but what I see is at the core of your system is a VoIP phone system. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. One of my most popular services for sure.
And, our listeners will have, various knowledge about all this. So I don't want to assume that anybody knows anything. But VoIP, would you explain what the acronym VoIP is?
Yeah, so VoIP is voice over internet phones. It's basically connecting your phone system through the internet so that you can use some different technology features like being able to call through a computer or call through an app on your phone, et cetera. Where we take it a step further is integrating said software into your practice management software and vice versa. So not only are you able to use some of these tools and technology for calling, receiving, outbound calls, et cetera, you can take advantage of some other cool things like being able to actually pull up patient information on your computer screen when a patient calls in, being able to.
That information is there. The information is in the practice management system, but it's buried under many, many windows.
Exactly.
And now you're making it accessible so that if I'm calling your office and I'm in your practice management system, you'll see on the screen who it is.
Exactly.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's an integrated, as opposed to just a VoIP phone system. It's an integrated phone system that integrates with your practice management software. So it rides alongside your practice management software, pulls information out. We're going to get a lot into the functionality in this, and then allows you to use all of that more efficiently in so many different aspects in the practice, like patient communication.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you and I both know that dental practices sit on what I would think of literally as a gold mine of data. There's unbelievable data in that practice management software, but most don't use that data. Is that a fair statement? Am I being too harsh?
No, I think our data shows that 96% of dental practices don't have any way to track their KPIs.
That scares me, but I recognize it as true for sure. So I don't use it. How does Adit help teams turn the data into smart, actionable decisions? So data is great. I'm a data hound. I'm a nerd. Let's be honest. I don't mind admitting that. I wear my nerd badge with honor. Josh, you're a nerd too.
I'm a nerd. I'm a software nerd.
Yeah, I'm using it as a term of endearment. But the data is great, but until you use it, until it's actionable, it's a bit academic. So how does Adit do that? Convert it into actionable decisions?
Well, I'd say first of all, you have to make the data easy to digest. It's got to be set in a format that's easy to read, easy to understand, easy to navigate, because, all of this data exists in a practice management software. The problem is that the software has changed and you have to be extremely trained in order to know where to go, what to search, to kind of create these reports to pull out specific pieces of data that you want to see, right? And then once you pull that data one time, it's now out of date. So if I wanted the same report next week, I've got to go re-pull the report, et cetera, et cetera.
Could be right? hours later, it could be out of date.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Especially if you're doing, like a morning huddle type situation where the schedule is going to change consistently. So the first part of it is just making the data easily accessible and easy to digest. Like a nice graph that's easy to understand that you can look through. If you've ever sat through like I'm going to use Dr. Andrew Huberman as an example. If anybody's watched his podcast, he'll sometimes go on these tangents that are just so scientific. It's hard for me as a software guy to follow the science, right? But then at the end of the episode, he'll say, so here's the takeaways. Here's the main three things in normal language that we can understand. So we try to do that, number one, for the data. We try to take the data, we try to group it, put it in a nice, easily readable graph so that we can know, first of all, what is going on. And then to your point, the next part is, okay, well, this number is great, but if I don't act on it, then it doesn't mean anything if I'm not executing on this data. So we want to use that as a measure, as a predictive measure of what's going on in your practice and what's possible. So what we do there, the term I use is called feature stacking. There's a lot of different things that Adit does. I mean, obviously we're a phone platform, we're the texting, we're the automations, we're the online scheduling, the digital forms, et cetera. But just an example would be, if you've got a graph that's tracking your unscheduled treatment, and believe it or not, a lot of practices will have 7 figures in unscheduled treatment at any given time, just sitting there.
They're literally have have over 7 digits in treatment that's been diagnosed that remains to be completed. And if they've been in practice any period of time, that could be multiple 7-digit figures.
100%. And you'll see if you go online in the forums, everybody wants to know how to grow their practice. And what is the first thing that everybody thinks about? Everybody thinks about new patients.
Yeah.
How can I do new patients? How can I do bigger cases, et cetera? But, we'll find these practices that have millions of dollars in unscheduled treatment and they just don't know how to access it. So, for example, with Adit, we've got a feature called Patient List, but basically you can go in and create a custom segment of patients that you want to communicate with based on certain sets of criteria, right? So I could go in and say, I'd like to see all of my diagnosed but unscheduled treatment from the last 6 months. You could even go in and add an additional filter and say, you know what, I only want to see the treatment that is greater than $1,000. I only want to see patients that have this as their primary insurance, or whatever the case may be. Continue to add these filters, right? And it breaks out that list for you of every patient that fits that specific criteria. Now, what typically happens in a practice is that list is printed out and taken to someone at the front desk, and you say, hey, can you start calling these people, see if we can get back in? And we know now that most of those calls don't get answered. I mean, with Apple's new update, it can send numbers that they don't know straight to spam without even ringing the phone anymore. Right. So it's just ineffective. So what we do is we take that list and we give them a very easy way to just highlight all of them and send a text or an email campaign. Right. But now we take it one step further, again, going back to that feature stacking term. Imagine I'm, sending a unique text message to a very specific segment of patients, but now I'm including the link to my online schedule as well. So now it's very targeted, saying, hey, John, we know that you haven't scheduled to get your crown yet, but here's a link to our availability. Go ahead and book yourself. And we've seen practices book $40,000, $50,000 in production from taking 5 minutes to send out a text. I mean, it's pretty absurd what's possible.
Real-time online scheduling is still, in terms of adoption, it's in the early stages in practice.
Yes.
And I would like to politely suggest that all of our listeners need to jump on that train. And you can choose to be as involved as you want with real-time online scheduling. I mean, think about it, Josh. My wife and I enjoy supporting restaurants, and especially if they're locally owned, independent restaurants, we enjoy. That's a hard business, and we like supporting them. I can't remember the last time that I've called a restaurant to make a reservation.
Yeah,
I use OpenTable.
Yeah.
And so imagine, for those of you that are still trying to get your arms around real-time online scheduling, it's OpenTable for your practice. Now, you can segment it if you want to get started with this, but maybe you want to only open up the hygiene schedule. That can be done. Is that correct?
Yeah, fully customizable. I mean, you can do new patients only or returning patients only. We've got a lot of practices that will include the scheduling in their automations, right? So you're already most practices are already automating a text to their patients, saying, hey, it's been 6 months, you haven't been in to see us. But now it's just taking that extra step and saying, hey, you haven't been in 6 months. Here's a link to our hygiene schedule. Just go ahead and book yourself.
Make an appointment. And it avoids all that back and forth. The patient calls, they get your voicemail in the office, you call them back, you get there. I mean, it just is, it's an exercise in futility, the old way of calling back and forth. But meanwhile, they can just go on your schedule and just book an appointment.
Yeah, I mean, that's where everything's going, man. I'll give you an example myself. I'm 33 years old. I went to play golf with my fiance this weekend, and I book all of my tee times online. I never make a phone call. And she starts calling the clubhouse and puts me on the phone and says, schedule a tee time. I'm freaking out. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I've never taken a phone call, just because I always book my tee times online. But it's as simple as that. It's just everybody's doing it. When I go to the barber, I book my appointments online. It's something I'm not proud of, but it is where the industry is going for sure.
Yeah. Well, and, I think it's a human dynamic where people want to be efficient, and and you're in control.
Yeah.
You're in control. And so that's a feature set within Adit.
Correct.
So you talk about the term you used was
feature stacking.
So now let's stack some of these up. So one of the things that I really love about Adit is your CareCredit integration. CareCredit, I've been a fan of back. Some of you will remember this. This will date some of our listeners, but I remember CareCredit when it was called DenCharge. DenCharge. It was simply a dental, financing option for dental offices, and of course, over time, it expanded into other verticals and it became CareCredit. But using financing to grow your practice is underutilized. We have a common friend at CareCredit that is one of my favorite people in dentistry. Why don't you name him, Josh? He's our mutual friend.
Oh, Samir. Shout out, Samir. We love you, buddy.
Let's give Samir a shout out. Samir is really one of the really good guys in our profession. But I think most practices underutilize financing as a way to help patients accept ideal care. And you've got some super cool integrations. Talk about some of those integrations.
Yeah, absolutely. We're big fans of CareCredit, and we always have been in the space, and what they do by making treatment accessible for a broader set of patients. But we found that practices were having difficulty having certain conversations around financing. And it's not something that you're necessarily trained on or that you feel confident in a lot of the time. And a lot of it was based around, making a suggestion and a patient maybe not getting approved for financing or whatever the case may be. So we said, is there a way that we could basically pre-qualify these patients for financing and make that accessible for the practice through our software? So a lot of different things that we've done here, but basically CareCredit's got a feature they call the batch quick screen, right? And it basically goes through your active patient database, and using previous purchase history without any kind of soft or hard credit check, it's saying that, this patient is pre-approved or is already an existing cardholder with us with a credit limit of this amount, right? Just like when you get a letter in the mail from Chase that says, hey, you're pre-approved for, $10,000 on this credit card. It's the exact same thing, right? What we did was we took that information and we made it accessible within things like your morning huddle, right? So when you come in, you log in for the day, you've got this list of patients coming in, which provider they're going to see, which treatments they're coming in for, all the numbers associated. But now you're also going to know, is this patient an existing cardholder and what is their credit limit? Or is this patient pre-approved and how much are they pre-approved for? So now when we come in and we have that initial conversation around money, around the potential for patient financing, we can be a lot more confident in what we present. And we know, so what we've seen is a 96% approval rate on what Adit shows as their credit limit. So if we're showing pre-approved for $5,000, there's a 96% chance that that patient will be approved for that $5,000, at least up to that $5,000. So then we were thinking, okay, what other ways can we take this and use it? I mentioned the patient list feature earlier in segmenting your patients. What if you could filter that same segment of patients by their financing capabilities? So now I've gone and I've looked at my unscheduled treatment. I said, I want to see all of my treatment, that is greater than $1,000. And now I want to see only the patients that are existing cardholders with a credit limit of above $1,000. So now from your marketing perspective, you've really narrowed down this niche that I'm targeting, saying, hey, we know you didn't accept this treatment yet, but we've got some amazing financing options in place that could allow you to get this treatment done ASAP. And, we've included it at different places. You talked about the phones earlier and how the information pops up on the screen. We call that a call pop in our world, but including that little CareCredit image there. So when the patient calls in, you're already going to see, does this patient owe us any money? Does this patient have outstanding treatment? And are they pre-approved? So making it easily accessible. We've seen some crazy numbers. So we've had the integration for about a year now. We've seen practices do more patient financing in a 3-month period than they had in the previous 3 years. It's making a huge impact. We even had one practice we did a case study on. They saw a 90% increase in case acceptance. That's a big number.
It's so profound. And Josh, I know you know this, and many of our listeners do, but you live in Nashville.
Yes.
And I had a chance to visit Nashville recently. And one of the things that amazed me was just the sheer growth that's happening in Nashville right now. But I have a solution to the traffic congestion in and around Nashville, Miami, New York, Chicago, LA. Would you like to hear my solution for the traffic?
Please, we need it.
Require everyone to pay cash for their car when they buy their next car. The freeways will instantly be empty because very few people will be able to do that.
Yeah.
And yet that's what we do in dentistry. We assume, think about all the cool things we can do clinically with patients today. And if the only way they can pay for that, is to write you a check, you're not going to do a lot of that treatment. The F-150 is the most popular vehicle by sales numbers. And the vast majority of those F-150 trucks are financed. It's something I think we need to recognize, in our profession. And I love the way, and I want to emphasize something. You said something quickly, but I want to emphasize it for our listeners. When you're doing that, quote, pre-screening, there is no soft or hard credit check involved, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So we're not dinging your patient's credit.
There's no ding on the credit whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that integration. That integration, I think, represents a great opportunity to grow your practice. Our listeners know that there's many things I'm passionate about on the operational side of dentistry. One of them is helping successfully resign from PPO plans, but the other is to help a practice grow internally. And I like to frame growth as helping more of your patients enjoy the benefits of great oral health and helping more people in your community enjoy those benefits. Using financing more effectively, like you make it so seamless, is a great way to do that. Well, let me shift gears. I know that you and I share a passion on KPIs, key performance indicators. For our listeners, I'll put you on this. Is it okay if I put you on the spot for a second, Josh?
Yeah, hit me.
What are the top 5 metrics that you think every dental practice should be tracking? And how does Adit make it easier and more effective to keep tabs on those?
Totally a loaded question. There's so many things that I think are important for practice. And I hope you agree with me because you're an expert, but top 5. Oh, all right. So no particular order. I would probably say production by hour, production per hour, by provider. If you've got multiple providers in your office, would be something extremely important to track. Yep. Just shows how efficient you are with your chair time. I think it's super, super important to know. Collection ratio, I guess I would say. Production's great, but obviously if we're not collecting, that's not.
Some of it's fiction.
Impact. Yeah. So collection ratio, how much of your produced dentistry are you actually collecting on?
Yeah. And I would modify that slightly to say, how much of your adjusted production are you collecting on? Adjustments can take many forms. The one that I caused smoke to come out of my ears are those insurance adjustments. Yeah. The difference between your UCR fee and your contracted fee. But there's other forms of adjustments. For example, warranty work. If you're redoing something, because it didn't meet your quality standard, that's an adjustment. Charity dentistry you choose to do, family dentistry, team member dentistry. There's any number of different adjustments, but I would measure your collections against that adjustment production. I think we're kind of picking nits there, but collections would be.
We're on the same page. We're on the same path together.
Yeah.
No, agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Give me a third one.
So I'm going to use a software term here, but I think it applies to dentistry as well. I guess probably looked at differently. The term I would use is churn. I guess a better term for dental practice maybe be patient retention. One of the things that we realized super early, if you go back to my story about how we started as a marketing firm, was a lot of practices, even when they're doing pretty well in the new patient realm, are losing a lot of patients out the back door. And it's something that they're not really tracking or not really focusing on. And it will absolutely stunt your growth as a practice if you're not keeping in mind, number one, the patients that are going inactive, so going 18 months without an appointment, or patients that we consider lost, churn. So what is your net growth rate? So track your patient retention and track your churn to see, all right, how many new patients am I getting? But also how many patients am I losing? What is my net growth rate of patients?
especially I would say in the post-COVID era. If you think about what happened 5 years ago when offices were shut down from anywhere from 6 weeks to 16 weeks, it threw everything in the lurch. Yeah. And there's a lot of patients that they're not intentionally staying away. They aren't consciously doing that, but all of a sudden it's been 5 years. Yeah. So I like to reactivate people that are past due for hygiene, because a lot of those patients think they're patients in your practice, but they haven't had an appointment in a while. Yeah. I was sharing that very same conversation with one of our clients, one of our Thriving Dentist clients recently, Josh. And I said, I think there's doctor, I said, I bet if you went into your local Safeway grocery store and you're pushing your cart one way down the aisle and the other way down the aisle comes one of your patients that you haven't seen in 5 years, that patient still thinks you're their dentist. They haven't gone anywhere else. They just haven't gone anywhere. Yeah. Anyway, my client, we're on Zoom so I could see his face and his eyes lit up and he says, oh my gosh, Gary, I got a true confessions. He said, I'm pretty good about getting my annual physical. Said, his father had some heart disease, so there's heart disease in the family history. And he said, I want to stay on top of that. He's 60 years old. And he said, I'm pretty good about getting my annual physical. The last few years, it's gotten away from me. And it had been a couple of years since I've had my annual physical. So he said, I called my primary care physician. He said, I know the office manager. Her name's Beth. And I said, Beth, it's Dr. So-and-so, and I'd like to make my annual appointment for my annual physical. And I'm a little bit embarrassed. So I think it's been 3 years since I made my last one. I'm embarrassed about that. And she said, Doctor, it's been 8 years. And she gave the date. She said, the last visit was here. She goes, oh my gosh, I thought it was 3. And if I would have had a polygraph, on my wrist, lie detector test, I believed it was 3 years. I would have passed that polygraph test, but in fact, it was 8 years. My point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Give us a couple more KPIs you're fond of.
I think case acceptance is an obvious one.
How do you measure that? So it's a polemic. In order to have ultimate case acceptance accuracy, we have to have a tail on it at some point, right? Because how do you incorporate that? Because not everybody is ready for, especially if it's elective dentistry or ideal dentistry, they're not necessarily ready for that. So how do you manage the accuracy of case acceptance data?
Well, you would go in and you'd first of all set your timeline that you want to look at, and then you'd look at how you want to pull the data. Because, some people consider, if you put together a treatment plan and let's say that I take, a couple things and I accept treatment on a couple things and a couple things that I don't, would that be considered that treatment plan wasn't accepted, depending on how you look at it? Or am I doing it by treatment and which treatment gets accepted? The way that I think is generally accepted, and again, correct me here, is just based on presented treatment versus what was accepted during, a given timeline.
And so you could set parameters on the time frame.
Correct. Yeah, because everybody looks at it a little bit differently. And again, remember, we are pulling data from a practice management software. Every practice management software looks at things a little bit differently. Every dentist looks at things a little bit differently. So there's a little bit of give and take of, how is the information presented? What do I consider a case accepted? And then coming to meet those things together to give you as accurate a number as possible. But regardless, it's something that we need to keep an eye on. I think case presentation is one of the most important things.
If a doctor doesn't have data on that, then they respond anecdotally. I remember in my own practice, I would ask Dr. Paul, one of our dentists, hey, how are you doing on case acceptance? And for example, let's say the day before he saw 2 new patients and both patients scheduled, for the treatment. He'd say, I think we're doing really good. Yesterday, I had 2 new patients and both of them scheduled. Conversely, let's say neither of those scheduled. He'd say, man, I got to work on that. We're not getting any case acceptance. Well, neither one of those answers are accurate. Anecdote doesn't help here. Can I add a fifth that I'm fond of?
Please.
I know you guys do. So I've coined the term hygiene occupancy. It's the idea of all the available hygiene appointments in your practice, what % got filled with a butt in the seat by the time that appointment time came around? Hygiene occupancy. To me, that's critically important because obviously we want to keep those filled. and it kind of allows us to work with our hygiene scheduling coordinator to achieve a very high level of performance by having ASAP lists and having people that they can contact to get into the schedule. But that would be a fifth KPI that would put high up there as well.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, you can continue to expand on these things. I go back to production per hour, that can be for your hygienist too. And the more data that you have on these certain things, that all of a sudden that hygiene occupancy rate, I'm able to show you how much open chair time you've got and what that relates to in terms of dollars. Yeah. And I think that really, one of the first things I said was presenting the data in something easy to digest. When you're talking about occupancy rates and percentages and open chair time, maybe that doesn't connect. But when it is a dollar amount sitting in front of you and you say, this is how much money we are not getting because we're not being efficient.
Well, it either becomes something to celebrate or it's a painful reminder.
Yeah.
Either way, you want to know it.
There's not a ton of dentistries that fail. I would say that there's just a lot of dentistries that are kind of coasting and don't really know their potential until they see the numbers. And like you said, anecdotally, I'm doing pretty well. I know what we're producing. I know what I'm collecting, but what am I capable of? Is really the question that I would ask.
Yeah. I want to go in a different direction on functionality. And this is something that I believe, by my own experience, is an epidemic in dentistry today. Missed phone calls during business hours. Again, if you don't know your data on this, when I ask, and it's a loaded question because I usually have the answer in my pocket before I ask my client. But I'll say, hey, doctor, how do you think you guys are doing on answering calls during business hours? And again, I'm emphasizing during business hours. If a patient calls at midnight, as far as I'm concerned, it's perfectly okay for that call to go to voicemail. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I think that would be okay.
Yeah. But during business hours, and if they don't have the data, the common response is, oh, we got that down. I got many phone lines, multiple team members answer the phone. That's not a problem. And then you pull the data, and the data tells a different story. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, what we see is still about 33% of calls go unanswered during business hours.
So one third of them.
One third of them.
I saw an actual, this is data from a particular client who I'll leave nameless for confidentiality. Great practice in a top 1% practice in terms of production, collection, production per hour, patient retention. They were missing 42% of their calls during business hours and had no idea. Yeah. And think about it. Marketing's job is to get the phone to ring. At a very simple level.
Yeah. Right? I mean, there's several different steps to it.
No, we're not answering it.
Yeah. To even get the call is difficult. I mean, to know, I think it makes it even more impactful when you know what you're paying to get these calls. Obviously, I go back to data one more time, but knowing what you're spending on your marketing or your new patient acquisition, and knowing what it's taking to get that phone to ring. And then also, another number, just go back to that, lifetime value of a patient, knowing how much a patient is worth to your practice, knowing what you're paying to get that patient to call you, and then not being able to answer the phone, which is kind of the most basic part of it, to be able to convert that patient. But yeah,
and today, Josh, I think we have an ever impatient society, right? And I have to admit a true confession on this the other day. I landed at my destination. I pulled up Uber, and it was going to take 8 minutes for the Uber to get 8 minutes. I'm not waiting 8 minutes. And I pulled up Lyft, and Lyft was there in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
But can you imagine what I would have said years, before we had Uber? Hey, you just punch a thing on your phone, and a car shows up and takes you door to door. Would you wait 8 minutes for that? Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, wait till the fully autonomous cars are everywhere and it's just waiting outside for you when
it's there for you.
Man, it's crazy. But yeah, it's the same concept. If a new patient's calling in, think of it like sales. The hottest time to get that lead converted is when they are top of mind, like when this is the one thing that they're trying to figure out. And if we miss that, even if we call them back an hour later, an hour and a half later, we don't know what's going on in this person's life. I could have been calling you on my lunch break. and I've got to get back to work. And now we play phone tag for the next 4 days. By the time you get me, I've already made an appointment at a different practice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. People will go to if they found you by organic search engine optimization, where they Googled and they found you. And if they don't, if you don't answer that phone, they're going to the next office on the Google search.
Yeah.
And it's just the reality of society today. I know you've got some cool functionality inside Adit, to help convert those calls, help reduce missed calls during business hours, and some really cool ways of dealing with it that result in more appointments.
I mean, to keep it basic off the rip, we want to automate a text to the patient right away. Right. If there's any reason that we miss a call, even if we're just helping a patient at the front desk, we want them to get a text right away from our practice phone number. That's an important distinction. We don't want them to get a random text from a random number. We want them to get a text from the number they just called. Right. And that text,
so that's going to that's going to go right to their pocket or purse.
Correct. Yeah. So it's not something that just gets overlooked. Right. So it's quick text, and you customize your messaging, obviously, to just say, hey, sorry, we're helping someone at the front desk. We'll be back with you in 2 minutes. I mean, I think that's the most basic version that I firmly believe every practice should be doing regardless, because a lot of the time that patient might just text back and be like, hey, I just need to reschedule my appointment for next week, or whatever the case may be. And you can just communicate that way. Where the industry is going, I mean, this is already active in a lot of places. I'm sure some practices have tried the AI receptionist, or, even more as an overflow, I would say right now. I really haven't come across, I mean, obviously in the space, I've done a lot with AI. I haven't come across anything that I love as a true receptionist yet. And I don't think that the patient experience is going to respond well to fully navigating there. But I think maybe having it be as an overflow to where an AI can answer your calls and, do a few basic functions. That's certainly where Adit is going with our phone system, with in addition to the missed call text, having an AI be able to actually answer and respond. But because of our integrations with all the different features that we offer and working with the practice management softwares, this just as an example, patient calls in, they're a new patient. We can actually book them and write that appointment all the way into your practice management software without having a live person on that phone call.
Right. So talk about efficiency in the office. One of the things we're experiencing, and it's no secret to all of our listeners, inflation. Everything we buy is more expensive, but especially wage inflation today in dental offices is extreme. And this will allow you to be a lot more efficient. I'd like to put you back on the spot for a second. Can you share an example of how Adit has helped a practice maybe change course or uncover a blind spot using analytics? Maybe they thought everything was going just fine, but they had a blind spot and they didn't see it. How did Adit and your analytics benefit that practice that might be in that situation?
I want to give you a couple different examples here. I'm going to give you one on the new patient side and one more on the growth side. I told you the story of how Adit kind of came to be. And one of the first realizations that we had that we needed more data was a client that was doing marketing with us, and they were performing traditionally very well in the new patient realm. They're getting, let's say, 40, 50 new patients a month, which for most practices is beyond what they need.
Yeah.
But the practice would keep coming back to us saying, I need more. I'm not growing. I need more. And it goes back to that patient retention I was talking about earlier, where you're losing patients at the back end.
So the back door is wide open. The front door is open and the back door is wide open.
Exactly. And just being able to give that practice the data to say, hey, you're getting 40 new patients a month, but you're losing 42. Like, we're going backwards here. We're not even breaking even. And that was just such a realization because, marketing is a subjective thing, right? What is successful in marketing to you and to the next practice are probably going to be different things in most cases, right? But being able to put hard data in front of someone that say, hey, new patients is not your problem. Patient retention is your problem. That was a huge impact. I could see just that revelation and the understanding of that would change internal behaviors and internal operations to correct that. No, it changes everything.
If you don't know it's a problem, you're not going to work on solving it.
Exactly. They say that solving the 90% of solving a problem is figuring out what the problem actually is.
Recognizing what that problem is. You might be solving the wrong problem.
Exactly. So I'd say that number one. And then on the growth side, I go back to unscheduled treatment, man. There's a lot of opportunity sitting in, your average practice. I'm in all kinds of forums. I talk to a lot of doctors. I speak all over the country, and a lot of people are focused on growth, but they're focused on the wrong things. And so just understanding what opportunities available within your current database now and properly leveraging those patients and making sure that we're making dentistry available to those people and making it clear and obvious and making it easy for them to book. So I go back to knowing your numbers on what's sitting there, being able to very quickly and easily contact them or create a list of people that you want to contact, making it easy for them to book, make it easier for them to show up, just automating as much of that process as you can, right? But if you don't know that it's there and you don't know how to contact them, then it's all for naught anyway.
Well, Josh, you had me at hello when I did my demo. Literally, you remember that demo that we did,
Yes,
and you had me at hello because of the deep integration, the all-in-one aspect of it, and the coordination of all the different functionality that you had there. I'd like to invite our listeners to schedule a demo. Would you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll direct? And you've been kind enough to offer our listeners an incentive. We'll talk about that in a minute, but give our listeners some encouragement to set up a demo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if any of what we've talked about today is connecting with you, if you're trying to grow your practice, you just can't figure out what's missing in that recipe, or if maybe you're doing a lot of the right things, but your overhead's just too high on it. We talk to practices every day that are paying 4 to 5 different companies. Maybe they're paying one company for their phones and spending $350 a month. Maybe you're paying another company for your analytics and spending another $300 a month. You've got a third company that does your text to pay. I mean, it's super normal. So if that sounds like you, if that sounds familiar to your practice and you really want to consolidate and make things more efficient, maybe cut costs on your overhead while still growing, then I think Adit might be a great fit for you. Definitely encourage you to check us out.
Josh, I did an analysis for one of my clients. And in terms of combining those functionalities, this office was paying close to $1,200 a month for these different functions. And when we put it all, packaged it under Adit, it was a fraction of that cost. You've been kind enough to offer our listeners an incentive. Would you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to incentivize you guys just to take a look, right? No strings attached. We want to give you a $50 Amazon gift card just for taking a look. Obviously, no pressure. If you do decide that Adit's the right fit for you and you want to move forward, one of the things that has been really great for us is our insurance verification services. We're going to include that for free for life in your package, so no additional cost. We're going to include that for free. If you call in,
Josh, I want to thank you for spending some time with. Literally, you had me at hello in that demo. The way you've integrated all these different functions, the way you've added unique functions that don't exist in other places, and talk about efficiency. I'm a big fan of efficiency. One of the reasons I'm a big fan of efficiency, Josh, is that it allows our team members to do the face-to-face stuff with patients that's so important. I'm a huge advocate of a relationship-driven practice. And when you've got all these things happening through technology, it frees up your team members to actually be talking to Linda about her family, talking to Linda about her, your patient, about her last vacation trip. And it really allows you to leverage your team members to do what they can do best, which is connecting with your patients. And then we've got these functions here that are allowing your practice to run at a supreme level of efficiency and knowledge and data.
People are really, I think when the AI topic comes up, people are very concerned about losing their jobs or about technology replacing certain jobs within the dental practice. But I would argue that it's not about replacing, it's about enhancing. It's about taking things off your plate that take too much time or that you're not able to do efficiently and giving you back that time to where it can go to patient care.
Yeah.
and improving the communication along the
Patient
process.
care and patient interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thanks. I really appreciate all you and your team are doing to help dental offices thrive.
Thanks, Gary. It's been a pleasure.
And I also want to take a minute and thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you here. Thank you for making us the #1 dental podcast. And thank you for the privilege of your time.